Yeah, so speaking from an individual perspective, I think that I've been truly humbled by the fact that actually members put their faith in me for this role. It was an incredibly difficult feat to achieve within the space of 1 week, given the instability that has taken place over the last 18 months with various administrations coming and going. That's part and parcel of politics. But I actually see that over the course of the last couple of years, people have gradually lost their faith in politicians. So the vision behind it, whilst I'm very humbled, I don't take the responsibility lightly. And I think that it's really important to understand that working in a coalition is exactly what I want to do to bring the stability across a broad range of political views across the city so that people feel better represented. And one of the things that I think is really important to me is that people know that if they have a broad range of people from a different political perspective coming together as an administration that seeks to represent this city, to know that those residents are at the centre of the decisions that we make going forward with greater numbers, which makes it more easier for us to make decisions and not be distracted by the petty politics of division and polarisation that has been prevalent over the last couple of years. So that's where I'm coming from with the intention of bringing together a coalition, and I call it a Labour-led coalition of common purpose, because we all have the best interests of this city at heart. The second thing I want to talk about is resetting the dial on the culture of communication between politicians. For far too long, we have been distracted by attacking each other within the chamber, outside the chamber, in the press, and I think that we need to get rid of that. So my leadership and my administration is about blocking out the noise from the sidelines, focusing on the residents, focusing on the job at hand, and making sure that we get the job done. So there's going to be a zero tolerance approach. You won't see it from myself or any of the administration members in resorting to personal attacks to anybody across the chamber. We owe it to our residents to be the best possible example of behaviour and standards. And I certainly hope that the residents appreciate that we are resetting the dial on that culture of best behaviour in politics. I think that it's really important that we look after our most frail and vulnerable in society. You would have seen whilst I was cabinet member, and a mark of our administration was to prioritise that. And that can be evidenced by the fact that we didn't allow the Dementia Resource Centre to be closed down. We've looked at an alternative place for that as well. Likewise, the Industrial Hub facility, and having a look at some of our residents who have learning difficulties and helping them to get into employment. We reversed that decision too. So we're actually really evidencing that we're putting people's needs at the forefront despite a decline in funding that is coming our way. It's inevitable. I think that analogy can also be made with councils up and down the country in being faced with that, but largely that is due to factors as a result of an ageing population that we have very much in this country, which then leads to an increased demand in adult social care. And as a result of the increased demand, we're having to look at, number one, yes, budgets. Number two, maintaining that level of service to that vulnerable population to make sure that people are kept well. And that can be actually organised and also directed through our Prevention, Independence and Resilience programme, which is one of the key features of our corporate strategy. And in that, our vision is to make sure that people are kept well for longer at home. So prevention plays a huge part. And I think in years gone by, we haven't emphasised enough under previous administrations about the whole prevention element. And how have we managed to achieve that? Through our digitally innovative approaches. So one of the things that we're incredibly proud about is our Hey Geraldine, which is our digital chatbot that seeks to help people stay well at home for longer, to make sure that if they are discharged from hospital, they don't have to wait as long for an assessment, and for that assessment to result in equipment that will keep them more independent at home for longer, being put in and implemented in their home over a long period of time. So the waiting times around that have decreased drastically as a result of the introduction of this technology, preventing people from deteriorating and going back into hospital. So this has a multifaceted approach. And likewise, having a look at digital technology to predict somebody's risk of becoming frail, becoming immobile, or deteriorating so that they're sent into hospital. There is currently an exercise to have a look into that kind of digital technology, and that is the way forward. And these are just some of the things that we're having a look at actively and some of our strategies going forward.
Is that digital thing in-house? You're doing that in City Council?
We are doing that in City Council. In fact, it's been so successful that I went to Labour conference and saw the digital partners with us who have made this possible, known as DATNEXA, who were at conference, and the number of authorities that were going to them and asking them for information on this technology. And it made me feel so proud to see Hey Geraldine's name on the wall of that exhibition. I can't tell you, we have really put Peterborough on the map of this country with reference to that. So I think that really does need to be out there. So there are pros and cons to every situation. I always like to look towards positivity. This was something that I set out when I took up leadership. And actually, the days of looking forward are well and truly here. And whilst it is really important to understand and acknowledge that we do have budget pressures, we are looking at that. And what we want to do is have a look at resolutions through putting out our budget consultation to our residents to ask their opinion on it as well. So we're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it in consensus with the views of our residents. So hopefully we're going to be launching the budget consultation shortly. We would really appreciate that as many people as possible take part in that consultation. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, yes, we've had a couple of hard years in this council with reference to balancing our budget. That's not going to be any different this year as well. Yes, there will be some difficult decisions that we may have to make, but we will gauge the views of our residents very carefully when we make those decisions. However, this is where the good news comes in. Through the Fairer Funding Initiative from the government, I think that there will be years down the line where we will see a surplus, actually, of funding, which we have never seen in years gone by. And sometimes it takes a little bit of personal sacrifice, but honestly, over the horizon, there is a positive outlook on this. And that is the message that I'd like to take back to your readers or listeners to focus on, that we have never seen a situation with surplus budget resource. And that is a position that I think is a very good one for us as a council. But I think the Fairer Funding Initiative is going to rectify a lot of that in many ways. I think that we always want to claw back from actually making decisions where no council, I think, up or down the country makes the decision by default to sell off assets. Sometimes that has to happen, and that has to happen at the expense of preserving our services. That's the key message over here. If we want services that have to run for our population, there will be some difficult choices that have to be made. Although that's not the default position that we want to do, sometimes it's a necessary step. But at least we know that we're doing that at the cost of making sure that services aren't being compromised. So I think that's a really good question. Already we've been 3 weeks into this coalition of common purpose, and actually it's not just a strapline in terms of how we have worked together on issues that we might have a difference of opinion on. We have come to a common ground on it. I think, like I said at the beginning of the interview, our main objective is looking after the residents of this city. And many of my coalition colleagues share the same view. That is why you have seen that we have equally shared roles across the board, with my deputy being from Peterborough First. We have housing that you know is being led by Councillor Christian Hogg, and adults and health being led by Councillor Neil Boyce. So I think that we've got a good range of views, and if we do agree to disagree, it's in a healthy environment, but it's not one that comes at a stage where we compromise the needs of our residents. So yes, whilst there will be a difference of opinion, so far we've always met with common ground on a lot of those issues. So I think it's really important, without having to target anybody individually, that we've looked across the board at assets that may have been placed in a similar situation well before my administration's time. So to say that we've reset the dial on a lot of things involves better governance, better decisions, better transparency, and alongside that transparency, we are reviewing all of those assets and having a look at currently making sure that an agreement is reached, especially with PCRFM, on an agreement moving forward. So I think it's really important that as an administration, some of the decisions that have taken place in the past across the board with relevance to assets that are in a similar category have to be re-looked at. I am suitably informed that PCRFM in particular, we are reviewing it currently. It's important that people understand that our administration is going to be accountable in the way of governance and transparency. That really matters to us, and that we ensure, whilst we are in talks with PCRFM, that a degree of financial compliance is most certainly reached. So first of all, I have to establish that we don't own the Hilton Hotel. Obviously, that's really important for people to understand. We don't own it. It's in the hands of the administrators. But what are the factors to look at? Is it a council's job to be running public services or to run a hotel? The answer is the former. It is our job to be running public services and delivering for the residents of our city. We don't have the expertise to manage a hotel. And we've made the decisive decision, we are not going to waste taxpayers' money on that hotel, and instead to sell it off. Yes, we will have to cut our losses, but I'd rather that we do that sooner rather than later down the road, when a lot of those costs could become exponentially too high for us to justify. So it was important that we made that pertinent and pivotal decision to just draw a line under all of this and carry on, where we can now not be distracted by that issue, but look after the needs of our residents. It was a legacy issue that we inherited, and we're putting it right. What is going to do is go back and have a look at some of the plans with reference to sort of defining the site, defining the specs around the pool, obviously, working with the MPs to ensure that that funding is in place in a timely manner, and also gaining the buy-in of the combined authority as well. I know that Mayor Paul Bristow has verbalised very openly that he is willing to work with us, and this is my open invitation to him. Come work with us and help us deliver on this pool as well. We've done our bit of the legwork. We would love to see you come hand in hand and join with us so that we can make this a collaborative success sooner rather than later. So my top priorities are that, having a look at a lot of the Towns Fund money that we're having, I would like to see something visual come up in our city. I am so excited about the future, simply because we have now received, both north and south of the river collaboratively, £40 million worth of Pride in Place funding from the government. This really does empower our local residents to make decisions about what they would like to see in their area. Now, through that, my top priorities are seeing visual changes within our city. And on that, we've got obviously our station quarter that hopefully should be starting as well. And those projects around the Towns Fund, I think that if we begin to see spades in the ground on that, people will really appreciate that this is an administration that has started to get things done. Second priority, I think, is around making this a child-friendly city. I firmly believe that if we have thriving, happy children within our city who have access to a good education, their families have more money in their pockets, and also they are healthy from a personal perspective, which is what our children's services are all about, they then contribute to a society of healthy adults, which then causes a thriving economy. So that is my second priority. My third priority is around people feeling safe in our city. So we've already looked at safeguarding legislation. I am really pleased to report that the council is already looking to implement the recommendations of the Casey reviews. That is actively being undertaken and underway. I want people, when they walk around our city, especially on the weekend when people like to socialise, that they feel safe within our city. So that's the other thing. And also, I will put in a fourth one. I am incredibly passionate in putting Peterborough on the map around our tourism and culture. We have so many jewels in the crown in terms of our heritage. We get overlooked, and actually we're going to fight for our fair share of funding on our tourism collective. And I know that there are many stakeholders with the best will towards making sure that Peterborough needs to be a destination for people to visit across the country and internationally.